Hi, Patreon listeners, and welcome back to the Rafe Foreman podcast. I'm sorry it's been a couple of weeks since I've posted, but I've been out and about and unable to create a session. So today I'm going to talk about why the block method. I probably should have started with this instead of just diving into the block method, but I didn't, so here we go. The block method is my own individual creation, and you're going to see a demonstrative up here of 26 building blocks, and these blocks have letters on them. I'm particularly fond of these blocks here because not only do they have letters, they have numbers that correspond with, like 3, you know that's the C because that's the third letter in the alphabet. It also has pictures on it. So we'll be using those today for me to illustrate the point of the block method. And I really think it's important for you to understand it's about energy, because the energy is what carries the meaning of the words. Words are meaningless without the energy and the context in which they're used. And on a yellow pad, I wrote down, run the dog. Now, what does run the dog mean? Run the dog means take your dog out and run him, doesn't it? Run the dog. But how about the dog run? Now, that's a syntax problem, I realize, but because we want to put the dog runs, plural, on the end of it. But run the dog is different than the dog run, because the dog run is a place where the dog runs. Run the dog is an action of running the dog. Do you see the difference? Same words, but the order changes the meaning dramatically. And it's from that little simple exercise that we just went through that I made an adaptation to the improvisation game String of Pearls, which has become wildly famous at events where I teach because everybody wants to see the string of pearls. And I'm going to show you how the string of pearls was derived, the method that I use. It's an improvisation game that I didn't create, but what I did create is the method of string of pearls that corresponds with the block method to increase the energy or change the energy of the words that you're using, because that's where the meaning lies. So, what is the block method? The block method is a structural phenomenon that allows you to change, create, increase, decrease the energy associated with every communication that you desire. And I'm not trying to make linguist out of you, but there's 5 basic components of language. And the first is phonology, and that's speech structure. Run the dog run, dog the run, dog run thee. Those are all changes in phonology because they change the structure of the words and they change the meaning. Morphology is something I'm very fond of because morphology, it's not what it sounds like. We're not trying to morph something. Morphology is taking the smallest unit of measure, the smallest word to have meaning. So, for example, the dog run. Those are 3-letter words, and everybody learns the basic meaning of dog, the basic meaning of run, the basic meaning of thee, and then we get more complex as we go. Syntax, and you hear me talk about syntax a lot, is the study of how individual words and their most basic meaningful units are combined to create sentences, known as a syntax. So putting words together in the form of a sentence is syntax. And when I'll tell you there's a syntax error, that's the words aren't going in the right order, or in the way they make sense. Semantics, and I'm using this in a different way than you probably use it in your everyday parlance. Semantics applies not only to the grammatical structure, but we also have a wealth of figurative and rich descriptive language. Semantics is where I really like to focus, because instead of saying run the dog, you can say aggressively run the overactive dog. And do you see what I just done there? I've used descriptors that let you know this dog is overactive, and we're going to aggressively run him to get some of that energy off so he can behave himself when we bring him inside the house. That's what semantics are all about. And then pragmatics refers to the way that the members of the speech community achieve their goals using language. The way we speak to our parents is not the way we speak to a sibling. And if you don't believe that, just go have a conversation with a teenager. I'll tell you something else. I'm involved in some pretty serious cases right now, and I can't understand what the people are saying. The language they use, the syntax errors that they use, the language that they use is just beyond me. I can't even understand what they're saying. And I'll give you an example. Finna. You know what finna is? I'm finna beat you. I guess that's a derivative of fixing to, which is old man language, and what I'm fixing to go eat. I guess slang derivative of that slang derivative is I'm finna go eat. And so it makes me crazy. People spend all this time creating abbreviations for words when it would be simpler just to say the damn words. But there we go. So I have to have a young translator translate what the hell these people are saying in these police reports, because I can't understand it. And that's all about the style and use of words and language in the community in which the speaker is speaking. The people in the hood, or the people in the neighborhood, the people in the apartment complex where these speakers are speaking understand it perfectly. People in my generation and in my neighborhood do not understand. So why is that important? Because we're supposed to be superior communicators as lawyers. And if we can't communicate to our audience where they can understand it, not where we can understand it, then we're just wasting our time spinning our wheels. So the block method is a way to structure your words, structure your sentences that naturally increase or decrease the power of the energy associated with the words. And I'm going to use just a simple illustration here. If you look at the top 10 blocks on this 26 block pyramid, there's 4 on the bottom, then 3, then 2, then 1. And that's pretty simple. If you'll look at the left side, the Q, the M, the D, and the G, you'll notice that that is the energy that I'm trying to create by my own block method, because the point I'm trying to make is the G. I could just make that point, you're a girl. And now I've made that point. However, if I want to increase the energy and the communication about it, you have lovely blue eyes. You have very feminine features. You have a very attractive face. You're a girl. Do you see the different energy that I have built just by asking these and those are called context blocks. And so they build the energy. Now I'm going to change those to virtue blocks so you can understand how I feel about this girl. I'm not going to tell you how I feel about this girl. I'm going to let my words and the block method do it for you. So I'm going to start over. Remember, the point is at the top of the pyramid, the G, this is a girl. You have a degree from Harvard. And the witness says yes. You studied anthropology. And the witness says yes. You've been digging on historical sites throughout the world. Yes. And you were the first girl to ever make a find of this nature. Yes. Now, how do I feel about this girl? Were those virtue blocks or were there more context blocks? They were more sophisticated context blocks because I really didn't tap into the emotion. I just gave you some facts about this girl, but I bet you feel differently about her than when I just said you're a girl, right? Because you don't know anything about this girl, that I'm just saying you're a girl. So let's go back and look at virtue blocks. Virtue block number 1, you believe in doing the right thing. Always. You believe in accountability if you do something wrong. You admit your mistakes. You're an honest girl. Now, instead of just being a context block that has facts about this person, where she went to school and what she studied, now I'm making virtue value judgments about her. Virtue blocks. You do the right thing always. That's a virtue that we should all aspire to. And she does. You see what I'm saying? You see the subtle difference. A virtue block is a context block, but a virtue block is about a rule, a moral, or an ethical imperative. So you see how it works? Now, I'm going to circle from the X all the way to the G. And the reason I'm circling the X to the G is, do you believe that you could build those 6 blocks in their present configuration and they not fall down? You can't, because there's steps and the blocks are out on the edge. About the time you put the 6 in the queue up there, they're going to fall over. And so what I call this other body of blocks, and now I'm still talking about the pyramid. These other blocks that lead to the point you're trying to make for the G are foundation blocks. They're what keep your virtue blocks intact. They're what keep your context blocks intact, and they're foundation blocks that are necessary to support the point that you're trying to make. Now, not all points need this kind of 26 points of detail, but the points that need it, you should use it because it accentuates the meaning and the understanding of the point you're trying to make. And I'll just give you another example. And a reason I love these blocks. If I picked, let's see, there's a block number D, which is a 4 right under the G. It's got a picture of a duck on it. If I put the duck facing you, now I've used more than one letter. There's not just a letter D. There's a picture of a duck. So if you're older than 3 years old, you can look at that and say duck. Then I'm going to put the hatchet on there next. It's down about the middle of the pyramid. So now that I've got 2 blocks, what's the story? Is a duck chopping somebody up? Or is the duck getting chopped up? I probably didn't have to tell you that. I mean, the duck can't handle the hatchet. The duck's not using the hatchet. The hatchet's being used on the duck. And I can do that in 2 blocks because they have pictures on them, which is why, again, I love this block set. Now, if I put one other block on there, so I'm using the duck, I'm using the hatchet again, and then I put the happy hippo at the top, which is a smiley face. That's why I'm going to use it. No, I tell you what, I'm going to use the hands. So I'm going to put the duck, the hatchet, and the H, which has hands that look just like this. Now, what is that story? A duck, a hatchet, and hands. To me, it confirms that somebody, a human with human hands, is using the hatchet to chop the duck. I don't know, what story do you create? But you see how pictures automatically create stories in our mind? Words do that if we empower them with the right emotion, but pictures do it automatically in and of themselves, which is why I'm going to tell you to paint pictures and use pictures. So now I'm going to put the cat, which is the V. So I've got a duck, a hatchet, two hands, and a cat. What's that story? Well, one of the stories that I can imagine is that somebody's feeding their cat duck meat. You know, cat food that's got duck in it. Maybe so. Why the hatchet? Maybe that's what was used. We didn't have a can opener, so we used what we could to indicate that's how they got the can open. But you see what I'm saying? Once you start painting with pictures, the story starts developing really fast. And the warning that I have about that is you got to be ready, because when you ascend the pinnacle of the point you're trying to make, there is no point beyond that. It's only down. Let me say that again. When you've reached the height of the point that you're trying to illustrate or make by your words or your pictures, the pinnacle is the top. There's no place to go from there but down. So you want to make that point that you're trying to make either just before the pinnacle or right on top of the pinnacle as you make the ascent for the maximum effect. So that's how I use the block method. Also, if you'll notice on my little squiggly lines, when you set these blocks up in this way, they make a natural set of stairs. And that is very critical to my block method, because I don't want to do all the work. I don't want to have to think and create, how can I get the most energy out of this sentence, or how can I get the most mileage out of this phrase. I want the witness to go up the mountain and climb the mountain to the pinnacle himself. And so all I'm doing is providing a staircase, a stairway, if you will, to allow him to climb that mountain. And I used to teach that I push him off when I get up there and we're on the pinnacle and I'm trying to make the point. But I think even more effective is when your audience knows that he's going to fall, jump, slide, but he's going to descend. And that is point made when that happens. So I'm going to bring these blocks up here and do some more video with the blocks, because I think it's kind of important. But as you think about the videos that you're going to see, I think it'll be important for you to understand what a virtue block is, what a context block is, what a foundation block is, what a substantive block is, what a conclusion block is. And you got to keep in mind that each one of these blocks has three elements within each block. And so each block that you're looking at has to have all three elements in each block. And that is an affirmative statement, questions that prove the affirmative statement to be true, and a conclusion. And that is exactly the instructions for string of pearls. And so if you're looking at how does string of pearls fit into my block method, you can take any line, up, down, sideways, diagonal, and that is a string of pearls within itself. I'm going to do some illustrations and examples of the string of pearls and how marvelous they are as a tool to constructing story in the use of the block method with the aid of string of pearls. Next time on the Rafe Foreman podcast here on Patreon. Thank you.